All right, let's get the link in the chat and let's get going. This way, yes, right. Let's get the link in the chat. Let's get going. Let's get the link in the chat. Let's get going. Okay, come on. There we go. All right. I think I got it up. Yeah. Okay. And thank you to my one person who's watching me now. Appreciate it. Theo could sleep little because he knew about Pete Duffy. And he couldn't say anything or it would harm Julio's cousin's family. So what was the guy going to do? It's like, whoa. I don't know. All right, thank you for all two of you who are watching now. Everybody's on their Zooms talking, which isn't a bad thing. Okay, I'm just going to jump right in because they can watch it later. Thank you for I got two people watching. Thank you, my two people. Chapter 11. The nightmares stopped just before sunrise, and Theo abandoned the notion of somehow finding a meaningful rest. He stared at the ceiling of his bedroom for a long time, waiting for sounds that his parents were up and moving about. He said good morning to Judge, who slept under his bed. Judge is his dog. Theo had convinced himself many times throughout the night that he had no choice but to sit down with them early that morning and tell him the story of Julio's cousin. He changed his mind many times. And he could not, he decided, as he finally eased out of bed, force himself to violate this promise that he had made to Julio and his cousin. He couldn't tell anyone. If a guilty man was about to walk free, it wasn't Theo's problem. Or was it? He made the usual noise as he went about his morning ritual. Shower, teeth, braces, the daily torture of deciding what to wear. And as always, he thought of Elsa and her irritating habit of quickly inspecting his shirt, his pants, and shoes to make sure they all matched. Elsa's the family secretary at the Boone and Boone lawyer business. He had heard his father leave a few minutes before 7. He heard his mother in the den watching an early morning television show. At exactly 7:30, Theo closed the door to his bathroom and called his uncle Ike. Ike was not an early riser. His sad little career of a small-time taxman wasn't very demanding, and he didn't start the day with a rush of enthusiasm. His work was dreary, something he had mentioned to Theo on many, many, many occasions. And there was another problem. Ike drank too much, and this unfortunate habit made for very slow mornings. Over the years, though, Theo had heard the adults whispering about Ike's drinking. Elsa had once asked Vince a question dealing with Ike, and Vince replied with, "Maybe if he's sober." Theo wasn't supposed to hear that, but Theo heard a lot around the office, more than others knew. The call was finally answered with a scratchy root, "Is this Theo?" "Yes, Ike, good morning. Sorry to bother you so early." "No problem, Theo. I assume you have something on your mind." "Yes. Can we talk this morning early at your office? Something really important has come up, and I'm not sure I can discuss it with my parents." "Sure, Theo. What time?" "A few minutes after 8. School starts at 8:30. If I leave too early, Mom gets suspicious." "Okay, Theo. I'd love to." "Thanks, Ike." Theo hurried through breakfast, kissed his mom goodbye, kissed his dog goodbye, and was on his bike racing down Mallard Lane at straight up 8 o'clock. Ike was at his desk with a tall paper cup of steaming coffee and a huge cinnamon swirl. Are you okay? I guess. I need to talk to someone in confidence, someone I can trust, someone who knows something about the law. Did you murder somebody, Theo? Did you rob a bank? No. Well, you seem awfully uptight. It's the Duffy case. I might know something about whether Mr. Duffy is guilty or not. He glared at him. Go on. There's a witness out there, a guy nobody knows about, who saw something at the time of the murder. And you know who it is? Yes. And I promised not to tell. How in the world did you come across this guy? To a kid at school. I can't tell you anything else. I promised I wouldn't. Ike swallowed hard and grabbed a cup of coffee. His eyes didn't leave Theo. He wasn't surprised. His nephew knew more lawyers and court clerks and judges and policemen than anybody in town. Whatever this unknown witness saw out there, said Ike, that would have a big impact on the trial, right? Yes. Has this witness talked to police or lawyers or anyone? No. And this witness is unwilling to come forward? Yes, that is correct. The witness is afraid of something? Yes. Would the testimony of this witness convict Mr. Duffy, or would it acquit him? It would convict him, no doubt. Have you talked to the witness, Theo? Yes, I have. And you believe him? Yes, he's telling the truth. Another long drink of coffee and the smacking of lips. Today is Thursday, the third full day of the trial. Oh wow, today's the third full day of the Trump impeachment trial. What a coincidence. From what I hear, Judge Gantry is determined to finish this week, even if that means holding court on Saturday. So the trial is probably half finished. Theo nodded. His uncle stuffed another large bite into his mouth. So the question is obviously what, if anything, could or should be done about this witness at this point in the trial. That's it. Well, from what I gather, Jack Hogan needs a few surprises. The prosecution started with a weak case, and it's only gotten weaker. I thought you weren't following the trial. I have friends, Theo. Sources. Ike jumped to his feet and walked to the far end of the room, where old shelves were filled with law books. He ran a finger along the spine of several. He returned to his desk and put a book in front of him. Here it is. Under rules of procedure, a judge in a criminal trial has the authority to declare a mistrial if the judge thinks that something improper has occurred. It gives a few examples. A juror gets contacted by someone with an interest in the outcome. An important witness gets sick or can't testify. Key evidence disappears. Stuff like that. Does it cover surprise witnesses? Not specifically, but it's a pretty broad rule that allows the judge to do whatever he thinks he's right. The argument could be made that in the absence of an important witness is grounds for a mistrial. What happens after a mistrial? The charges are not dismissed. Another trial is set. How long? It's up to the judge, but in this case I suspect Gantry would not wait long. A couple of months, enough time for the secret witness to get his act together. Theo's mind was racing so fast he couldn't decide what to say next. So, Theo, the question is, how do you convince Judge Gantry to declare a mistrial before the case goes to jury? Before the jury finds Mr. Duffy not guilty, when he in fact is guilty? I don't know. That's where you come in, Ike. I need your help. Ike shoved the book aside. Here's what we do. You go to school. I'll go to the courtroom and have a look. I'll do some research, maybe talk to a friend or two. I won't use your name. I'll always protect you, Theo. Can you meet me during lunch? Sure. Okay, go on. Take off to school. Why haven't you told your parents? You think I should? No, not yet. Maybe later. They're very ethical, and you know that. They're officers of the court. They might force me to reveal what I know, said Theo. It's very complicated. Theo, this is too complicated for a 13-year-old, period. I agree. I think I really agree. Call me during lunch. Will do, Uncle Ike. Thanks. During recess, as Theo was hustling away to find April, someone called his name from down the hall. It was Sandy Coe, racing to catch up, person from his class. Theo, do you got a minute? Look, I wanted to tell you that my parents went to the bankruptcy lawyer, that Mazingo guy, and he promised them that they were not going to lose our house. That's great, Sandy. He said they'd have to go through bankruptcy and all that stuff you explained to me, but in the end we get to keep the house. This is from my mom. I told her about you. I think it's a thank you note. Theo reluctantly took it. She didn't have to, Sandy. It was nothing. Nothing? Theo, we get to keep our house. And with that, Theo noticed moisture in Sandy's eyes. He was ready to cry. Theo fist bumped him and said, My pleasure, Sandy. And if I can help again, you let me know. Thanks, Theo. During government, Mr. Mount asked Theo to give a class an update on the Duffy trial. Theo explained that the prosecution was attempting to prove that Mr. and Mrs. Duffy had been through a rocky marriage, and they had almost filed for divorce 2 years earlier. Several of their friends had been called to testify, and they had been embarrassed, in Theo's opinion, by harsh cross-examination from Mr. Clifford Nance. For a second, Theo thought about opening his laptop and reading courtroom dialogue, hot off the press, but then thought better of it. He wasn't committing a crime by hacking into the reporter's site, but there was definitely something wrong with it. As soon as class was over and the boys headed for the cafeteria, Theo ducked into a restroom and called Ike. He's gonna walk. No way is Hogan gonna get a conviction. How much did you watch? All morning. Clifford Nance is just too good. And Hogan has lost his way. Hogan is the prosecutor. Nance is the defense. I watched the jurors. They don't like Pete Duffy. But there's no proof. The proof isn't there. He'll walk free. But he's guilty, Uncle Ike. You say so, Theo. But I don't know what you know. No one does, Theo. What do we do? I'm still working on it. Stop by after school. You got it. I'm going to go ahead to chapter 12 a little bit because we have some time. Thank you all, 17 of you that are watching now. 17 of you that are watching, you'll do great on my writing thing we do on the 25th. How does a courtroom work? Because you're getting a feel by hanging with the story. I don't know where the other 13 people are. So I read ahead a little bit. Chapter 12 is this interesting side journey because this is all about Theodore Boone, the kid lawyer. So he gets involved in another law thing that just lasts one chapter. And I'll let it unfold. But then there's another super astounding boom in one more chapter after this. The most popular girl in the 8th grade was curly-haired brunette named Hallie. She was cute. She was outgoing. She was captain of the cheerleaders. None of the boys would challenge her in tennis because she could play. She once beat Brian in the 100-meter freestyle swim. Since her interest centered around being athletic, Theo was on her B list. Maybe even her C list. But her dog had a bad temper. Theo was about to move up on her list. The dog was a schnauzer, and he frequently became irritated when left alone throughout the day. So somehow the dog escaped through the pet door, dug under the fence, was picked up by animal control half a mile from home. Theo heard the story as he was finishing lunch, and Hallie and her 2 friends rushed to the table where Theo was eating. She told the whole story. Hallie was in tears, and Theo couldn't help notice. She was really cute. It was a big moment for Theo. And I'm sorry this is just like too much, but the author really likes accentuating his teenage crushes. Has this happened before? Yes, Rocky was picked up a few months ago. Will they gas him? Edward asked. Edward, like our Edward. Edward was part of the group that had gathered around Theo and Hallie and her friends. Hallie was usually attracted a crowd of boys anyway. Oh, please stop, Theo snapped at Edward. They won't gas him. Hallie said, my dad's out of town and my mother's seeing patients until late in the afternoon. I don't know what to do. Take it easy, Hallie aside, and he opened his laptop. I've done this before. I assume your dog is licensed? Strattenburg has a law that requires every dog to be licensed. Strays were picked up and kept at the pound for a month. If no one adopted a stray after a month, the dog was put to sleep. Or gassed, as Edward had cruelly put it. Hallie, but they didn't use gas. Hallie's family was more affluent, though. Most affluent means rich, money. Her father ran a company, and her mother was a busy doctor. Of course, their dog would be properly licensed. Yes, she said. The dog is licensed in my dad's name. And your dad's name is Walter Kershaw. Theo typed. She had stopped crying. Okay, I'm checking animal control intake log. Oh, here it is. Rocky. Rocky was taken to the pound at 9:30 this morning. He's charged with violating leash law. Second time this year. The fine will be $20 plus $8 more for boarding. A third offense will land him 10 days in dog jail and a fine of $100. When can I get him? Animal court is held from 4 to 6 each afternoon, 4 days a week. They're closed on Monday. Can you be in court this afternoon? I guess. I don't need my parents? Nope, I'll be there. I've done this before. Edward asked, doesn't she need a real lawyer? No, not in animal court. Even a moron like you could get through with it. What about the money? Hallie asked. I can't charge. I don't have my license yet. No, not you, Theo. The money for the fine. Oh, here's the plan. I'll file a notice of retrieval online. That means that Rocky is basically pleading guilty to the leash law violation, which is a minor offense, and that you, as one of the owners, will pay a fine and retrieve him from the pound. After school, you run by the hospital, see your mother, get the money, and I'll meet you in the courthouse at 4 o'clock. Thanks, Theo. Will Rocky be there? No, Rocky stays at the pound. You and your mother can pick him up later. Why can't I get him in court? Theo was amazed at this question. This sounded kind of ridiculous. Animal court was the lowest of all courts. Should be the highest, right? Yeah, the nickname amongst lawyers was kitty court. Not kitty, but K-I-T-T, kitty. Kitty court. What's been going around in my... I am not a cat. Anyway, that's a joke. The judge was a lawyer who had been kicked out of every firm in town. Oh, it was treated like an unwild stepchild. The judge was a lawyer who had been kicked out of every firm in town. He wore blue jeans and combat boots and was humiliated to have this position as judge of animal court. The rules allowed any person with an animal in trouble to appear without a lawyer and handle their own case. Most lawyers avoided kitty court because it just was beneath them. Its hearing room was in the basement of the courthouse, far away from the big leagues. Did Hallie really believe that officers hauled a bunch of dogs, cats, chained and muzzled every afternoon to get processed and returned to their owners? Criminal defendants were brought from jail and kept in a holding pen and waited their turn in front of a judge, but not dogs and cats. A sarcastic reply almost escaped Theo's lips, but instead he just smiled. Sorry, Hallie. It doesn't work that way. You'll have Rocky at home tonight, though. Safe and sound. Thanks, Theo. You're the best. On a normal day, those words would have rattled around Theo's ears for hours. But today was not a normal day. He was too preoccupied with the trial of Pete Duffy. Ike was in the courtroom. Theo texted him throughout the afternoon. Theo wrote, You there? Update, Uncle, please. This is texting I'm reading. Yep. Balcony. Big crowd. State finished their court at 2 p.m. Nice job raising doubt with divorce talk and old golfing buddies. Is it enough proof? No way. This guy's walking unless... Do you have a plan? Still working on it. You come to court? Maybe. What's happening? First witness for defense. Business partner of Duffy. Boring. Gotta run. Chemistry class. You get an A in chemistry, okay? No problem, Uncle Ike. Okay, we're going to finish up with this animal court story. Though animal court got little respect amongst the lawyers of Strattonburg, it was seldom dull. The case involved a boa constrictor named Herman. And evidently Herman had a knack for escaping. His adventures would not have been a problem if the owner lived out in the country. However, the owner, a 30-year-old with tattoos up his neck, lived in a crowded apartment building. A neighbor had been horrified to find Herman stretched across his kitchen floor when he was about to make oatmeal. The neighbor was very upset. Herman's owner was indignant. Things were very tense. Theo and Hallie sat in folding chairs, the only people to watch this. Herman was on display. He was in a large wire cage, perched on the corner of the bench, not far from Judge Yeck. That's his name, Y-E-K. Y-E-C-K, Yeck. The only other official in the courtroom was an elderly clerk who had been there for years. How would you like it, Judge? Said the neighbor. Living in the same building with this snake here, never knowing if it's going to come slithering across your bed while you're asleep. Your bread. Slithering across your bread. Okay. He doesn't bite. He's harmless. Harmless? What about a heart attack? Judge, you have to protect us. He doesn't look harmless, said the judge. Isn't he rather large for a red-tailed boa? He's 86 inches as best as I can tell. You have other snakes in your apartment? Several. How many? 4. Oh my God, said the neighbor. All boas? 3 boas and a king snake. Why? May I ask why? Said the judge. Some people like parrots, some people like gerbils. I like snakes. They're nice pets. Nice pets, the neighbor is. Is this the first time one has escaped? Judge Yeck asked. No. Well, that clears things up. As fascinating as it was, Theo was having trouble focusing on Herman and his problem. 2 things diverted his attention. The most obvious was the fact that Hallie was sitting very close, and this made Theo's moment just the finest. But this was overshadowed by a more serious issue of what to do about Julio's cousin. The trial was zipping along. The witness would soon be finished. Judge Gantry would soon be giving the case to the jury. The clock was ticking. All right, I'm going to have to pause here because it's 10:50. But what they're not saying here is that if a not guilty verdict goes down, they can't try him again. That's in the Constitution of the United States. It's called double jeopardy. Once someone gets a verdict in a court of law, you can't bring them back to court on that same try and try them again unless you can get a mistrial declared. So we'll leave that thought with like that. I'll see 4th grade at math. It's not small group today. It's